age of supersonic travel had arrived. Almost. New York's airport authority was refusing Concorde permission to land. Local residents were up in arms about noise from her engines. The Emergency Coalition to Stop the SST led protests and drive-slows at JFK. Eventually, it was agreed Concorde could make one test flight. On the 19th of October 1977, Air France pilot Jean Franchi and BA captain Brian Walpole flew to JFK. Without this crucial transatlantic route, Concorde's future would be in ruins.
And we landed at JFK. There were people down the side of the runway, people along the taxiways, and we were then taken into the moment of truth. We were briefed on what sort of press we were going to get, and we were warned that they would be hostile. That turned out to be a masterpiece in understatement.
Now, another question, gentleman at the back.
One of the very early questions was, how long, Captain Walpole, will it take you to deafen our children with your aeroplane? At this stage, at the back of the hangar, the doors opened and the Concorde was tractored in. Everybody looked round, and as they looked round, you could hear the gasp, the sighs, oh! And the whole of the tenor of that press conference changed as people were heard clearly say, oh, isn't that beautiful? What an aeroplane. Now, that was a moment in Concorde's life that I will never forget, and a moment in my life that I'll never forget.
But Walpole's ordeal was not over. The following morning, Concorde had to run the gauntlet of the noise monitors. Walpole and his team had spent a year devising a cunning way to outwit them.
The manoeuvre that we did, we're climbing to 50 feet, 25 degrees of bank, throttle back, continue the climb. It was so successful, didn't even trigger the noise monitor, let alone get anywhere near the unacceptable level.
Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Brian Walpole, and welcome to Concorde and our supersonic operation from London Heathrow to New York's John F. Kennedy.
Now, at last, Concorde could fly the premium route it so badly needed. Taking passengers from London to New York in just 3.5 hours, less than half the time of a conventional jet.
My first flight on Concorde, we were waiting for takeoff at the end of the runway, and I thought to myself, do I really want to work on this aircraft? It's a bit like flying in a missile, it's so fast. I thought, too late now, girl, we're off.
Okay, gents. 3, 2, 1, now.
We took civil aviation from 600 miles an hour to 1,350 miles an hour in one single giant stride.
Concorde is just in a class, in a league all of its own. It was the sort of Grand Prix racing car of the flying world. It was very powerful. It was incredibly responsive. You could just fly it with your thumb and your forefinger.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Captain Walpole, just to let you know how the flight is progressing, and the answer is quickly.
And I eventually mastered the technique after a couple of slips of carrying 15 or so champagne flutes on a silver tray so as not to have a trip.
Okay, coming up to Mark 1, Mark 1. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, we're through Mark 1, the speed of sound, no bumps, no bangs, Concorde. 4,000 feet now. The aircraft will gradually climb as the fuel is consumed and the weight decreases, and continuing the acceleration towards the magic of Mach 2. Mach 2, twice the speed of sound.
At this speed, most passengers remained blissfully unaware Concorde was expanding around them. Friction with the air heated the fuselage from a freezing -56 to a boiling 127 degrees centigrade, stretching it by 8 inches. Little refrigerators switched on to cool the windows and save anyone burning their fingers.
We were carrying the American team from New York to Malaga for the Ryder Cup, and we decided that they'd try the longest putt. So what they did is the chap putted a ball right back down the length of the aeroplane. They caught it in a cup. And it took 23 seconds. And in that time we'd gone 8.5 miles.
I would like to point out to you the extremely fine view of the curvature of the Earth that we have up here today. That is the curvature of...
One of the great pleasures of flying Concorde was looking out of the tiny windows, because you've got this extraordinary landscape with the Earth curving away at the edges. Felt like being on a spacecraft.
Leaving Heathrow in the evening gave pilots a sight no human had seen before. Travelling faster than the rotation of the Earth, the sun appeared to rise in the west. Concorde flew so high, so fast, American spy planes had to be ordered out of the way.
One of them told me, he said they were sitting over Cuba, spying at 60,000 feet and had been for years. They were in spacesuits, sitting on the edge, and then they were told to move north by 30 miles. I asked why. He said, because there's an airliner going past. So he said, we looked out the window and there was a Concorde with 100 people in shirt sleeves drinking champagne.
1350 miles an hour, 23 miles a minute, a mile in every 2 3/4 seconds, 10% faster than a rifle bullet, Land's End to John O'Groats, 24 minutes, Concorde.
But in the first 6 years of service, Concorde lost money. Lots of it. In 1982, BA boss Sir John King decided it was make or break time for Concorde. He called Captain Walpole into his office.
He said, I am going to give you Concorde Division, which is going to be created, and it's up to you, and you form your own team, to turn Concorde's losses into profit in 2 years. He said, if after 2 years it's still losing money for British Airways, then I will terminate the operation.
Failure would spell the end of Concorde and the end of supersonic flight. The new Concorde division set to work. Brian Walpole and Jock Lowe looked at the routes, the fares, the flight timings, the sandwiches, everything. And they asked businessmen how much they thought a ticket on Concorde cost.
Well, most of them didn't know. It was their secretaries of travel companies that were doing the bookings. And when asked to guess, because the senior, very important people, they all guessed that the fare was higher. So very simply, we said, we'll charge them what they think they're paying. And so we put the fares up.
The move was a stroke of pure genius. Concorde was rebranded to provide a super elite class for merchant bankers, corporate lawyers, the rich and the famous.
I think flying Concorde full stop made you feel like you were in a club. There was the business class lounge, and then there was the first class lounge, and then there was the Concorde lounge. I mean, you were made to feel that way.
Concorde became the place to be seen.
I used to ask people for their autographs, and towards the end I got a little bit picky who I asked, you know. I've got Paul McCartney here, and he sang me a little song in the aisle. Concorde, 20th of May, every good wish, Henry Kissinger. Engelbert Humperdinck. Margaret Thatcher.
No aircraft, before or since, attracted as much publicity as Concorde. During Live Aid on the 13th of July 1985, 1 billion television viewers around the world watched Phil Collins dash between concerts in London and Philadelphia on the same day.
I was invited up to the cockpit to report back to Wembley and Bob Geldof and Billy Connolly. And I put the headphones on and someone said, "So, what's it like?" And Billy Connolly said, "It could be fucking anywhere. You know, we don't even, he could be underwater. We don't even know he's in Concorde." And then when I left to go back to my seat, the pilot said, "We're not supposed to do this, so don't tell anybody." And the world is watching. The world is watching. I thought that was quite cute, you know.
And when ordinary people wanted to fly Concorde, BA was quick to take the cash with cheaper charter flights.
My son said, "You won't get her on there if she won't even get on a 12 bus."
Some champagne for you? It was such a lovely atmosphere, and I remember once having a Spitfire pilot. It was just so satisfying to be able to take him up to the flight deck, and he had all his medals on, and so it was just delightful to take him up to introduce him to the captain.
Concorde flew out of the red and into profit. During the good years, the small fleet of just 7 aircraft generated up to a staggering 25% of BA's profits.
We made about £500 million, £500 million net clear profit. And suddenly now, everybody loved us, and we did. We loved being involved with the aeroplane as well. So it was a wonderful emotion, positive, successful emotion.
For once in her life, Concorde's future looked secure. But then in 2000, disaster.